In this video, I'm going to tell you about the new upcoming version of Age of Sigmar, what I think about it, and what you might want to think about. So last week I was at Origins Game Fair in Columbus, Ohio, and didn't get back until 3 o'clock in the morning on Monday morning. As it turns out, I had gotten my copy of the big Soul Wars box, the new Age of Sigmar starter box. I had gotten it on Friday while I was still in Columbus, so it wasn't until Monday that I got to actually, open it up and check it out. So the new box is pretty sweet, frankly. It's Stormcast Eternals Vanguard, which are kind of the more lightly armored, a little bit more range attack type Stormcast, and then it's the new Nighthaunt sculpts, which are all kind of ghostly, spooky, kind of Scooby-Doo-ish sort of, and they're great looking models. None of them are in the box right now because I've got them at home. I've been working on some, which I'm going to show you in a little bit. But stuff that does come in the box is, well, for one, this big honkin' hardcover. This big honkin' hardcover has got the rules in it. Now you might say to yourself, didn't it used to be a 4-page pamphlet? How is it that it is now a giant hardcover book? Well, actually, the new core rules pamphlet is in here too, and it is totally 18 pages. Now, that all being said, it's 18 pages, but it has a lot of artwork and diagrams. There's a lot of fancy going on there. The old 4-pager was 4 pages of 3-column text and basically no artwork. So they've expanded things out. They've given you more diagrams to show you, well, when this happens, this is how you do it, as opposed to just trying to tell it to you. In the last version of Age of Sigmar, there was a lot of, to some people's minds, ambiguity, where you're like, I don't understand, and then they had to do FAQs, and there was a lot of back and forth. This new version of the core rules, 18 pages, which you can also download now, actually. I'll post a link down below. This is a lot more explanatory. Everything here is a lot clearer. They've taken the last 2 years since Age of Sigmar first came out, and they've looked at all the questions that were raised, all the confusions there were, and I feel that, honestly, they've really tried to answer as many of them in this new document as possible. But so then you're asking, okay, great, but then what's this big honkin' hardcover book? Well, the hardcover book has got, frankly, a lot of fluff. People complained about the original Age of Sigmar in that they were like, well, there's not enough fluff, there's no story, there's no background, I don't know what's going on. Well, if you get this, you'll know. There is information and artwork for days in here. Story, explanations on different types of units, different types of races, all kinds of stuff. And then in the back, this kind of whitish section, this is all new kind of like battle plans, and the core rules are in here again as well. But you've got so much more, all kinds of battle plans. The main scroll, or the main book, flimsy, the little thin one, the core rules, has one battle plan, which is basically try to kill everybody. This has got a lot more in it. There's a lot more going on. I'm talking about allegiances and realms of battle and all of the other information, open play, campaign stuff, and match play. All of it is in this new big thick book, which you can also, from what I understand, get separately if you don't want to buy the starter. The starter is $160, I believe, US. And that comes with a ton of models, which are great. Plus also this book, plus also this pamphlet, plus like a ruler and some dice and some War Scroll cards for the units that are included in the box and a whole bunch of other stuff. I think it's a pretty good deal. If you're not interested in any of those forces, then probably just go out and pick this thing up. Or at best, at least download this so that you can start playing the new game with your new core rules. So another super important question, obviously. Well, so what did they change? Why did they make the update? Well, besides making things clearer, and I'm going to have to stress that things are so much clearer now, they've added some things, they've tweaked some things. It's not a huge leap. You still start out with your, you have your hero phase, and then you've got the movement phase, and then you have the shooting phase, the charge phase, the combat phase, and the battle shock phase. None of that has changed. You still roll at the beginning of each turn to see who goes first that turn. It's not, you go and then I go, and we basically figured that out at the first turn, and then it stays that way. It's still, you might go last on turn 2 and then go first on turn 3, technically getting 2 turns in a row. I know some people don't like that. I still think it's really cool. I think it's very interesting. I think it makes you have to plan a little bit better, because you don't have to just be like, well, I know that I get to go before he goes again. You don't when you're playing that in this format. So they've kept that, which I really appreciate. Other things they've done is they've added new command traits. The general that you have had access to their own command traits if they had any, but then there was also the Inspiring Presence, which was the only other command trait. Well, they've added 2 more. The 2 new ones are called At the Double and Forward to Victory, and they're basically movement related. So one is about re-rolling your charge, the other one is automatically running 6 and not having to roll a die. The trick is about command abilities is that you now have to spend command points. Command points have kind of leaked over from 40K into Age of Sigmar now. And the way it works is that, let's see here, command points, you start the battle with 1 command point for each War Scroll battalion you have in your army. And then in addition, you receive 1 command point at the start of each of your hero phases. So, and the thing that's also interesting too is that basically any hero can use an ability, and you can use the same command ability several times in the same phase as long as you have enough command points to do so. So it's giving you some new strategic ability, which is really kind of cool. Movement is pretty much the same, except now when you're moving over terrain, let's say there's a fence or a barricade, something along those lines, you actually have to spend the points to go over it. So if you're 3 inches away from a fence, you run up to it, that costs 3 inches. It's a 2-inch fence, so you spend 2 inches to go over it, or to go to the top of it, 2 inches to go back down, and then you keep traveling along your way. In the past, with the old version of Age of Sigmar, they just kind of didn't even take any of that into consideration. It was pretty much just like, well, it's a fence, and you do just go through it or don't, whatever. And there weren't a lot of rules for terrain. There's more rules now. You're not getting, dangerous terrain too much. I mean, you have the terrain functions that you had in the old one where you roll the dice and it's inspiring or damned or whatever, but you don't have, like, well, this is muddy, so it slows you down, or anything along those lines. You do, however, have cover, which you had in the old one, and you just had to be in a piece of terrain to basically get a +1 to your saving throw, or your save, armor save. But the trick is that there's also things that can be termed obstacles. If an obstacle is between you and someone who's shooting at you, you also then get cover as long as none of your guys are hanging out on the edges. So that's kind of a nice thing that you didn't really particularly have in the old version. In the shooting phase, you've got a lookout sir thing, which is not like the old lookout sir from 40K where you were rolling to see if this guy... Basically, it's just saying if you've got a hero in a unit, okay, and they're within 3 inches of any other, up to 3 of a unit with at least 3 people in it. So if you've got this hero and he or she is within 3 inches of a unit that's got at least 3 people in it, again, bad guys, then he's harder to hit because you don't know necessarily which one, or just the overall kind of scariness of battle, that sort of a thing. So it's not the old one where you used to kill the other people. It's just it becomes a little bit more almost kind of like cover a little bit, which is sort of an interesting thing. And I like these extra little bits. Another thing that's changed from the old version is back in the original version of Age of Sigmar, if you were in combat with somebody, you could still shoot people over there, even though you were in hand-to-hand combat with these people here fighting for your life. You could still be like, well, I got a crossbow, I'm going to fire it at those dudes over there and just see if that works. You can't do that anymore. If you're within 3 inches of an enemy unit, you have to shoot at that unit. So that basically kind of gets rid of that whole, I'm going to move up and be like, okay, I'm going to fire off into a different direction as I kick and punch this guy over here, which is, I think, a smart move. I mean, it was... there's a difference between realism and abstraction. So for some people say, well, it's not realistic. Well, I'm like, well, you're talking about dragons and dwarves and stuff, right? We're trying to show an abstraction to some degree here on the table. But to sit there and say, look, when you're that close to an enemy unit, you have to fire at that enemy unit if you have ranged weapons, makes sense. Wizards got a bit cooler. You can now dispel spells out to 30 inches. It used to be like 18. So that's kind of a cool thing. You've got other wizardy kind of things that you can do, which are also neat. It looks like to me that they're trying to put more effort into magic and wizardry. Between that new box set they're coming out with all of the crazy modeled spell effects, like the giant flaming skull and the big teeth and all that other, and the purple sun thing, whatever. That stuff is pretty cool. It looks like they're trying to put more effort into magic. The Stormcast now have magic users, which is, something they were kind of sorely missing before. So it looks like they're trying to put a little bit more interest into the magic portion of the game as well. But yet that whole, new add-on piece with all the extra models that are basically spell effects, that whole thing too it's kind of not a requirement. So, they've beefed it up a bit here in the core rules, but if you really want to go crazy with magic, then you got to pick up that other thing. And I'm hoping to get that soon because I want to talk about that as well. It looks like it's going to add a lot more fun, at least for me, to the game, and it might do the same for you if you're, into magic and maybe a little bit of randomness. Then the rest of the thing here is basically just explaining how war scrolls work, how battle plans work, how battalions work, stuff like that. So it's longer than the old document, but it actually explains a lot more and has some diagrams and some, photographs and things like that. So it makes sense. It didn't really add a ton to the old version. I think it explains the old version a lot more clearly. I think that it added just the right amount of extra crunch to little pieces, add a little bit more interest to terrain. There were so many games of Age of Sigmar I saw where it was just kind of like a big flat field with a couple of pieces. Now there's a little bit more reason to have some broken down, mausoleum fences or some stone walls or other kind of barricades and things like that, because it helps you now, especially with more range stuff happening, whether it's magic or whether it's, like the vanguards and that kind of stuff. It makes sense now to be able to kind of sit behind something and kind of pick people off if you can until they get to you and try to punch you in the face. So, you know me, I'm a hobby hero. So you're probably asking yourself, yeah, but what about the models? Well, as I said, I got the box in my hands this past Monday. Today's Thursday as I'm filming this. So I built a unit of 4 of the Grimghast Reapers. And then on Tuesday, I textured their bases and I textured their cloaks and their backs with my green stuff technique, which is one of my most popular videos, and it's from years ago. Pachow. And then I primed them black and then dusted them from above with the white primer, doing all that with my airbrush. And then yesterday, Wednesday, I got home from work, and about 7:30 after dinner, I got to painting. And I painted till 1 o'clock in the morning. And then I ended up with this, which I'm really kind of happy with the way these turned out. These models, spectacular, obviously. The new Night Haunts, if you've probably seen any of the pictures, they all just look amazing. But these, I think they turned out really well. I really like what they did. I did them differently than a lot of people do. A lot of people like to paint them almost all ghostly, or maybe real ghostly up until just the top layer. I wanted to have the little bit of that ghostly stuff coming up out of the bottom, but I didn't want it to be too ghostly. I wanted it to look a lot more like real, but then the kind of fade in from ghostliness to not ghostliness, coming much closer to the ground. They turned out, I think, well. I'm looking forward to building and putting together and painting the rest of them. Interesting thing about all these models is that all the models in this new kit, the Soul Wars, they're push fit, so you don't have to glue them together. I mean, I glue them because that's what I do, but you don't have to. They will just push fit together like the Shadespire models, actually. So do you need to buy any of this stuff? Well, technically no. It's Age of Sigmar. The War Scrolls are still out on the web, and as of this point right now, like I said, the core rules are ready for download, even though the actual stuff that I've been showing you here doesn't come out until the 30th of June. But you can download the core rules now and start playing. If you want to have a really nice big selection of Stormcast Vanguards and some sweet, sweet Scooby-Doo looking kind of floaty ghost guys, the Night Haunts, then I would think it would behoove you to buy the box set. And if you like the nice big, hardcover book, it's pretty sweet, got a lot of information in it. It's all a really good set, in my opinion, and I'm really looking forward to doing more Age of Sigmar stuff. It's not that I was starting to move away from it. I wasn't. It was just that all the long time, I really enjoyed the way that they had streamlined it. To some degree, I did feel as I played it more and more that it had been maybe just streamlined a little too much. I wanted a little bit more kind of interesting things going on with the terrain. I wanted a little bit more going on with magic. And in my opinion, this new version of Age of Sigmar kind of came across with it in spades.